We all think we know the story of the burning bush, right? Moses, a shepherd on the far side of the desert, sees a bush on fire that won't burn out. God speaks from the flames and gives him an impossible mission: go free the Israelites from the most powerful empire on earth. It's one of the most foundational stories of faith, this huge, dramatic moment of divine intervention. But what if the most important part of that story isn't the fire? What if it's actually 5 specific Hebrew words that usually get lost in translation? These words are like keys. They unlock a hidden message about how you can turn your own impossible situations, your own personal deserts, into moments of profound spiritual awakening. We're going to break down these 5 words, and I think you'll see the story of the burning bush and your own challenges in a whole new light. The first word we need to look at is the one that gives the story its name, Sneh, which we translate as bush. But here's the thing, this isn't the standard everyday Hebrew word for a bush. It's an incredibly rare word. It only shows up twice in the entire Torah, and both times it's talking about this specific event. That alone tells us to sit up and pay attention. For centuries, commentators have pointed out that a sneh isn't some mighty cedar or a beautiful olive tree, it's a thorn bush. And this choice is completely intentional. The great medieval scholar Rashi explained that by appearing in the humblest of plants, God was sending a powerful message. He was saying, I'm not some distant God who only lives in palaces or on grand mountaintops. When you are suffering, when you feel trapped in the thorns of your reality, I am right there in the thorns with you. The sneh becomes a symbol for the Israelites themselves, afflicted, in bondage, and on the surface, insignificant. Yet this is the exact place God chooses for his revelation. It's a radical idea that divinity isn't found by escaping our lowly condition, but by finding God inside of it. The bush itself stands for the people of Israel and for us. They might be in the fire of affliction, but they won't be consumed because God is with them. This one word, Sneh, reframes the whole story. It's not about a random magic plant. It's a declaration that God meets us in our humility and our pain. What's also fascinating is how the word itself sounds. The Hebrew word Sneh is almost identical to the word Sinai, the mountain where the bush was burning. It's as if the story is foreshadowing the massive event to come, suggesting that the same God who shows up in a humble thorn bush will later reveal his full glory to the entire nation on that very mountain. The journey starts small and personal before it ever becomes grand and communal. So the miracle of the bush is happening, but God doesn't speak, not yet. The divine call only comes after Moses responds. In Exodus 3:3, Moses says to himself, I must turn aside and see this great sight. The key word there is Ereh. I will see, from the root word ra'ah, which means to see, to perceive, and to understand. This is the hinge on which the entire story turns. The miracle was there, the divine was waiting. But nothing happened until Moses made a conscious choice to really look. He didn't just glance over while counting his sheep and keep walking. He stopped. He turned his full attention toward it. He got curious and decided to investigate. The Bible says, the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, and then God called Moses, Moses. The word Yered teaches us that spiritual awakening isn't passive. Revelation isn't just something that happens to us. It's something we have to participate in. How many burning bushes, how many opportunities for growth or moments of a potential divine encounter do we walk past every single day because we're too busy, too distracted, or just too numb to turn aside and see? Moses' act of seeing was an act of his will. He made a conscious choice to shift his focus from the mundane task of shepherding to the marvelous and mysterious. And you have to understand, in Hebrew thought, seeing is more than just physical sight. It implies a deeper discernment. Moses chose to look past the surface of a burning plant and ask why it wasn't burning up. He was looking for a deeper reality. This tells us that our own impossible situations, our personal burning bushes, often have a hidden message inside them. But to get it, we have to be willing to stop, turn from our path and truly see, to look with eyes of faith and ask, what is the deeper truth here? What is God trying to show me in this paradox of suffering and survival? Once Moses turns aside, God finally speaks. And what he says contains another profound truth, tucked away in a single verb. In Exodus 3:8, after describing the suffering of the Israelites, God says, so I have come down to deliver them. The Hebrew word is Yered, which means to go down or to descend. This is a massive theological statement. The God of the universe, the infinite creator, doesn't just issue a command from on high. He doesn't send an angel with a memo. He says, I am personally coming down. This idea of divine descent is revolutionary. It paints a picture of a God who is not distant, aloof, or uncaring about human suffering. He is a God of deep empathy, one who willingly closes the gap between heaven and earth. In the mystical tradition of Kabbalah, this relates to the idea of tzimtzum, where God contracts his infinite being to make space for our finite world and to dwell within it. The burning bush is the perfect picture of this, the infinite fire of God's presence living within a small, fragile bush without incinerating it. The word Yered is that principle in action. God descends into the harsh reality of his people's slavery in Egypt. He meets them right where they are. This should change everything about how we see God's role in our own struggles. When we are at our lowest point, in the pit of our own personal Egypt, it's so easy to feel like God is a million miles away, but the word Yered promises the exact opposite. It tells us that our lowest points are precisely the places where God descends to meet us. His rescue isn't a long-distance operation, it's an intimate, personal intervention. He is the God who comes down. As Moses gets closer, God gives him a strange command. Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is Admat-Kodesh, holy ground. Let's break that phrase down. The word for ground is Adama. It comes from the exact same root as the word for humanity, Adam. That's not a coincidence. The text is drawing a deep line connecting the person to the earth beneath him. But what makes this one patch of dirt holy? The word Kodesh, or holy, means set apart, consecrated for a divine purpose. The ground wasn't holy before Moses showed up. It was just a random, desolate spot on a mountain. It became holy at the moment of the divine encounter, and this teaches us something revolutionary. Holiness isn't a quality that lives in a place, but a state that is created by the presence of God. But why take off the sandals? In the ancient world, shoes were a symbol of ownership and status. To place your shoe on a piece of land was to symbolically claim it. So to take off your shoes was an act of surrender. It was admitting you don't own the ground you're standing on. It was an act of pure humility. God was telling Moses, to step into my presence, you have to strip away your ego, your sense of ownership, your worldly status. You have to come before me vulnerable and open, and acknowledge that this meeting is on my terms, not yours. By taking off his sandals, Moses connected his bare feet, his essential self, to the Adamah, the ground, reminding him of his humble human origin as Adam. And it's in that state of raw, humble presence that he's able to stand on holy ground and receive his mission. This shows us that if we want to turn our impossible situations into sacred encounters, we also have to take off our shoes. We have to let go of our ego, our plans, and our demands, and just stand in vulnerable awareness of the God who is already there. Finally, let's go back to what Moses first saw. He calls it Hamareh HaGadol, this great sight. The word mareh means more than just a sight. It can also be translated as a vision or an appearance. This suggests that Moses knew right from the start that this wasn't just a natural event, but something supernatural, a message that needed to be decoded. This word reveals the true nature of what was happening. It wasn't just a burning bush. It was a paradox, a vision that defied all logic. You have fire, which represents judgment and destruction, coexisting with a fragile bush, which represents life. And the fire wasn't winning. That is the mareh, the vision, judgment and mercy, suffering and survival, divinity and humanity, all held together in one impossible image. The vision taught Moses, and it can teach us, that God's presence in our lives often looks like a paradox. We find strength in our weakness. We find life in the middle of fiery trials. We find deliverance not by running away from our suffering, but by finding God's sustaining presence right in the middle of it. The great sight, Hamareh, is that moment of realization that the very forces we think should destroy us, the hardships, the challenges, the pain, are the places where God reveals his power to save us. When we face our own burning bushes, we usually just see the fire. We see the danger, the pain, the impossibility of it all. But God invites us to see the mareh, the whole vision, to see that the bush is not being consumed, to see that his presence is what's holding us together. This shift in perception, from just seeing a problem to understanding the vision, is what turns a trial into a holy moment. When you put these 5 words together, the story of the burning bush becomes a roadmap for our lives. God chooses to show up in the Sneh, the thorny, humble places in our lives. He doesn't wait for us to have it all together. He meets us in our mess. But we have to find the courage to Ereh, to actually turn aside and see with spiritual eyes what He's doing there. When we do, we find that our God is a God who will Yered, who will come down into our reality to rescue us. That very encounter turns the ordinary ground beneath our feet into Admat-Kodesh, holy ground as long as we're willing to take off our shoes and to be humble. And finally, our perspective shifts. We stop just seeing a problem and start to understand the Ereh, the grand vision of God's sustaining power in the heart of the fire. Moses didn't just see a bush on fire, he received a divine message hidden in these key Hebrew words. A message that turned a wandering shepherd into the leader of a nation. And that same message is here for us today. Your biggest challenges are not there to burn you up. They are an invitation to turn aside, to see differently, and to discover the God who is present in the fire, waiting to turn your impossible situation into your own holy ground. If this journey into the deeper meaning of Scripture meant something to you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more content like this. Now I've got a question for you. Which of these 5 Hebrew words hits home for you the most in your own life right now? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read your thoughts.